It is 6:30 on the morning of June 6, 1944, and Private First Class Harold Baumgarten of Company A, 116th Infantry Regiment, is wading through chest-deep water off Omaha Beach, the cold channel water soaking through his wool uniform, the air thick with diesel smoke and the metallic tang of sea spray. Around him, the ramps of the landing craft are dropping, and the world is exploding. Machine gun fire rakes across the water in long, hissing lines, slicing into men before their boots ever touch French sand. He cannot hear orders anymore. He can only hear the gunfire, the screams, and his own heartbeat hammering in his ears. These men are not hardened veterans. Most of them have never fired a weapon in anger. They are farm boys from Virginia, factory workers from Maryland, clerks and students who, just 2 years earlier, were living ordinary American lives. The 29th Infantry Division had trained for this moment for nearly 2 years on English soil, but no training exercise could have prepared them for what awaited on this 6-mile stretch of Normandy coastline, codenamed Omaha. Above the beach, dug into limestone bluffs nearly 100 feet high, waited the German 352nd Infantry Division, seasoned, dug in, and commanding a field of fire that engineers had spent months perfecting. Concrete bunkers, interlocking machine gun nests, mortar pits zeroed to the exact yard. The Germans called their defensive position Festung Europa, Fortress Europe. And on this beach, it looked unbreakable. The plan had promised something different. Allied commanders assured the men that a relentless naval bombardment and a wave of heavy bombers would crater the beach, destroy the bunkers, and leave the Germans stunned. Instead, cloud cover had pushed the bombs inland, missing the defenses entirely. The sand ahead of Company A was smooth, untouched, offering no shell craters to crawl into, no cover at all, only steel obstacles bristling with mines, and the open killing ground beyond them. So why did German commanders, men who had survived the Eastern Front and the deserts of North Africa, find themselves stunned within 72 hours? Why would hardened officers later describe these green American boys with something close to disbelief? To understand that, you have to go back to the training fields of England, the planning rooms of London, and the desperate gamble that would either break the back of Hitler's Atlantic Wall or shatter the men sent to take it. By 0700, barely 30 minutes after the first ramps dropped, Omaha Beach had become a graveyard of stalled men. Entire companies lay pinned behind a low shingle bank, the only scrap of cover on the entire shoreline, while German machine guns fired down from the bluffs in interlocking arcs that left no gap, no safe lane, no mercy. Boats continued to arrive, but many drifted off course, dropping men in the wrong sectors, breaking apart the careful invasion plan that planners in London had spent months designing. Officers were dying as fast as privates. Radios were jammed with seawater or shattered by shrapnel. For a moment, it seemed as though the entire invasion at Omaha might collapse before it had truly begun. And yet something began to shift. Not because of a brilliant new tactic handed down from headquarters. There was no headquarters left to issue one. It happened because small clusters of frightened, soaked, leaderless young men started making decisions on their own. Colonel George Taylor of the 16th Infantry Regiment, surveying the chaos around him, turned to the men cowering behind the shingle and gave an order that would become legend. Only the dead, and those about to die, were staying on this beach. Everyone else was moving. It was blunt. It was brutal. And it worked. Small mixed groups, no longer organized by company or platoon, but simply by whoever was nearest, began crawling toward gaps in the German wire. Meanwhile, on Dog White Sector, Brigadier General Norman Cota, one of the few senior officers ashore, waded through the surf with bullets snapping the air around him. Finding the 116th Infantry pinned and bleeding, he personally led men through a breach in the wire, directing a Bangalore torpedo to blow a path through the obstacles. Picture it, a 51-year-old general, cigar still clenched in his teeth, walking upright through fire that was killing men crouched beside him. Why would he expose himself like that? Because Cota understood something the German defenders did not yet grasp, that raw courage, multiplied across thousands of ordinary men, could be just as dangerous as veteran skill. By mid-morning, Captain Joe Dawson of George Company found a shallow, undefended draw between strong points and led his men up the bluff, clearing German positions as he climbed. Elsewhere, small teams scaled the cliffs hand over hand, bypassing the death traps the Germans had built directly into the official invasion routes. The defenders, trained to expect attacks through the draws, had never planned for green American boys climbing the cliffs themselves. The fortress was cracking, not from above, but from men nobody expected to break through at all. By the morning of June 7th, something had broken inside the German line that no map could show. Colonel Ernst Goth, commanding the battered remnants of the 916th Grenadier Regiment, gave the order that would have seemed unthinkable just 24 hours earlier: withdraw. His men, who had spent months perfecting their fields of fire from the bluffs above Omaha, who had cut down wave after wave of Americans on the sand below, could no longer hold their positions. Reinforcements were not coming. Ammunition was running low, and the beach below them, which had been a slaughterhouse just one day before, was now filling with American tanks, trucks, and thousands more soldiers pouring ashore behind the men who had broken the line. This was the moment German commanders had not planned for. The 352nd Infantry Division, just over 12,000 men, with fewer than 7,000 classified as combat veterans, had been asked to hold a defensive front stretching more than 30 miles. They had no significant reserves. They had been told the invasion, if it came at Omaha at all, would be stopped cold at the waterline. Instead, by the close of June 6th alone, 34,000 American troops had landed. By the following day, tens of thousands more would follow. Picture the German officers in their command posts, watching radio reports pile up, growing more desperate by the hour. Stronghold after stronghold reporting attackers approaching from directions no defensive plan had accounted for, not from the draws, but down from the high ground, from the flanks, from places considered unreachable. How do you stop an enemy who refuses to follow the script you built specifically to defeat them? That was the German miscalculation. They had prepared to fight disciplined formations advancing along predictable lines. What they actually faced were frightened, untrained boys who, when their officers died and their plans collapsed, simply kept moving forward in whatever direction offered a chance. Within those first 72 hours, the impossible had happened. Omaha Beach, the bloodiest sector of the entire Normandy invasion, was secured. American forces linked with the men landing at Utah Beach to the west, forming a continuous Allied front along the Normandy coast. The fortress Hitler's engineers had spent years constructing had been cracked open not by superior firepower alone, but by the sheer, stubborn refusal of ordinary men to stay down. 7 weeks later, the same troops who had crawled ashore at Omaha would help launch Operation Cobra, the breakout that finally shattered German defenses in Normandy for good. What happened on that beach was not the triumph of a perfect plan. It was the triumph of human beings who had every reason to break, and didn't. 82 years later, the bluffs above Omaha still stand, quiet now, grown over with grass where the bunkers once watched the water. If you've ever wondered what ordinary people are capable of under the worst possible circumstances, this beach still has an answer worth remembering. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments which moment stayed with you the longest.